My name's Dale.
Nice to
I
meet you,
am
Dale.
a weeb, and this is my wife Candace. And we have been married for almost 33 years.
Nice.
It was nice to meet you.
Yeah.
You too. We actually have friends, Dale and Candace.
We do. But my name is
sorry.
Sam.
Yes. I'm Erin, and we've been married for 19 years.
Yeah.
20 this year. Whoop, whoop.
How many kids do you have?
We have 2 girls.
Okay.
So they
Oh.
are 11 and
9.
9. Thank you.
Nice.
11 and 9. Do you have any children?
We do. We have 3, 2 daughters and a son, and our girls are both married. And we have 5 grandchildren now.
Oh,
Nice.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And our oldest grandchild is 7.
7, and the youngest
wow.
is
Nice.
2 months.
Nice.
There you
So-
go.
Just a little ahead of you in the curve.
Just a little.
Oh, just a little bit.
We get to talk about marriage.
Yes. Simple
It's a
topic.
good thing,
No
hey?
problem.
Easy
Yeah.
peasy.
Oh,
Easy,
easy
yeah.
peasy. Yeah, just find somebody, marry them, and move on.
Yeah.
Right? Done and done.
Hard work is done.
Yeah. Just gotta get married. Wedding
Yeah.
is the one thing. Okay, am I gonna reach for
Yeah,
one?
you
card?
go for it,
Let's
reach
do
for
it. Cool, cool, cool. How did you know your relationship, or no, yeah, how did you know your relationship turned romantic?
We have to start with this one.
In my mind, our relationship was romantic before I even met her. It
Hey.
was, the second I
Predestined.
met her, the day I met her, when I saw her, I thought, this is my girl. You bet.
We'd actually both been praying that somehow we could meet, and so
I knew
It's
where
a
she
really
was,
cool
who she was,
story,
but I
but-
didn't have any sort of an into her social circle.
Right?
And well, we got in. That was it.
So you both knew each other like
no.
No.
before or knew of each other?
Knew of.
Knew of each other, but just
Okay.
hadn't
Yeah.
formally met, sort of
Yeah.
thing. So you're both praying to meet each other.
Yes.
That's so cool.
And we didn't instigate it either, so it was all orchestrated around us. A few things just happened, so it was a pretty neat deal.
Yeah.
That
So
is
it
pretty
was-
cool.
We're in, and when this all started, it was a done deal.
It was romantic right away.
Yeah.
How old were you when you met?
I was 24.
I was 20.
Okay. Oh, that's really cool. It's
I-
amazing how that works though, like when you think about like how did this even begin? Like how do you meet somebody? How does that story begin? And so it's really interesting to I don't know. Those are always my favorite stories. How'd you
Mhm.
meet?
Our
I don't
story
know.
is not that exciting.
It's not. You walked into a church
Just
and I
wait,
said
ours
he's
gets
cute.
worse.
Okay, we'll just balance out.
No, I mean, we went to the same church in high school, went to the same high school, and
I thought he was
What?
cute from the second he walked into church. I was like, yep, I like his hair. Works for me.
yeah.
And I think you had also some of the similar thoughts as Dale when you said that once
yeah,
for
that's
me.
right.
You did.
Absolutely. I certainly did.
I think your words were, that's the woman or that's the woman who's gonna have my kids.
That was my first thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was wearing brown corduroy overalls, and I
Oh,
was 16.
yeah.
Never even said hi to him, but
No.
that's what he said.
No.
That's funny.
Yeah, and then I think as far as it turning romantic, I mean, obviously we were in the same social circle for a while, but I think there was one time we went for a walk and we started holding hands, and I think that was kind of
That was about it.
that was about it.
Yeah, my friend turned around and she went, "Oh my god!" And I said, "I know, right?" And that was about
Yeah.
it. But we were also 16, so there is that.
Yeah.
It's a long
Everything-
way from 24.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything's kind of all exciting at
Mhm.
16.
It's when you're dating at 24, then in my mind, it was a matter of this is horrible dating. I don't want to, this is just brutal. I do
Sure.
want to meet this woman,
Sure.
but I don't want to date like anything near high school
Sure.
because just get to this point. So you kind of expedite some of the stuff in regards to conversations and getting to know each other. And
For sure.
Yeah.
when you're in your 20s, then you can kind of fast track it. And then,
Well, I think even after a week of dating,
oh,
it was like, okay, is this going somewhere or not? It was
Sure.
kind of like
we
that was the
talked
oh.
and we talked and we talked.
a lot.
And she hammered me with questions. Like this
Like,
was, I was a
Let's just
Supreme
go
Court
through
judge.
it.
Ay, ay, ay. I didn't even know half the answers. But no, it was very intentional that if this was going to go somewhere,
Absolutely.
we're actually going to find things out
Yeah.
sooner than later,
Yeah.
because this is just going to waste a ton of time.
Yeah,
That's
that makes sense.
exactly.
I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
wasn't interested in wasting time.
No. Well,
Totally
how-
makes sense.
I think and it comes down to sometimes, I don't know, a place of maturity and a personality, or just maybe you've just kind of learned some things about yourself that you've just come to that point where you're just like, okay, look, let's just like get to this sort of level, and are we doing this or aren't we doing this? And it's
Mhm.
complicated though, because you always change with your life experiences, so it can look quite different at different ages. But
Yeah.
but sometimes you just gotta say, look, what's happening?
Yeah.
It's happening or not
Yeah.
at 16 though.
No,
You got time to figure it out.
we dated for about 4.5 years before we decided. I mean, we always felt that there was that intention right from the beginning that it felt different, even though we were 16. But we've always been more of a serious, I don't know, I've always felt a little bit like an old soul sometimes. So I knew that it was kind of serious right away, and that he'd probably be in my life for a really long time, even at 16.
Yeah.
And then we got married.
Our first date till our wedding day was 7.5 months.
Oh, well.
From the first time we met, I should say, till we were married. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm not a big fan of long engagements, so
No.
I approve.
Yeah.
We dated 4 months and we're engaged 3.5. So
Nice.
yeah, it was, like you said, we talked a lot.
Yeah.
There was,
And there is a lot
So,
to talk about. Like,
Mhm,
if
mhm.
you're making a huge life decision of involving somebody else in your life, there's a lot to cover.
And for us, a big piece of that was she had been a Christian,
Mm.
as a child, Bible college, Christian school, and I wasn't following Christ until I was in my early 20s.
Mhm.
So then I'm completely, I'm coming out of a completely different lifestyle,
Mhm.
and then trying to figure out what this means to
to be a Christian.
be a Christian. So
Sure.
I'm learning my own walk, growing in my own faith, and then at the same time now I'm being confronted, or not confronted, is
Well,
maybe
interrogated.
interrogated, but whatever, in regards
Let's
to
just
my
call it
faith.
what it was.
And that was essentially it. And then going to the work of figuring it out too,
Right.
which is so that was a completely different step for me.
But that would be an important consideration, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it has to be.
And something that I'm sure you were thinking, if this is going to happen, we got to make sure that these
Because I
boxes
knew
are
the
ticked.
life he had lived. And
Right.
so
Sure.
it was,
And then
Yeah.
we also, in these discussions, we very quickly set up some non-negotiables for us
Mm.
as we move forward.
Mhm.
There's things that just aren't going to be, they are non-negotiable.
Sure.
Mhm.
And I remember that because I had family that were dealing with divorce and separation, and it was used loosely, the term,
Mhm.
whatever,
Right.
and it is this backdoor kind of language.
Mhm.
Right.
But we just looked at each other and said, we're not
Right.
ever using that
Mhm.
as a backdoor language. The word is not, and has not in 33 years, ever come up for discussion,
Mhm.
hint,
as a joke.
alluded to
Yeah.
as a
Right.
joke. Never. It's never
Right.
been on the table,
Yeah.
because that's just the
Wasn't allowed.
non-question.
There you
In
go.
fact,
Oh,
one of our
that's good.
friends said, they comment on it because apparently I said one time, well, if Dale ever decides to divorce me, I'm following him. And they're like, they never forgot that. And I'm like, I said that? And I'm like, yep. No.
It's just
He's
gonna
not leaving
happen.
me. I'm going to go right with him. So.
The package deal. with
Yeah,
that deal.
exactly.
And I think when it, I think too many people walk into these relationships with things like that not addressed,
Yes.
and then what
Absolutely.
happens is there's too many avenues of back doors. Well, you could have, we could have, we said,
Right.
and then they lean on those things and end up not actually working their way through
Right.
anything.
Yeah.
And then essentially many times it falls apart because of that.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's
No, I agree. It's important
You
to.
have to start with that. I'm
Well-
not sure what the word is, but
But I mean, I guess I don't want to say necessarily always the cliche of common ground, but you have to have some sort of building blocks, like you said, that aren't non-negotiable, so that you just know you know where your lines are, and you
Mhm,
know
mhm.
where your relationship like can potentially grow and kind of go from. So, I mean, we had from 16 to when we got married at 20, we kind of had the understanding right when we were 20 that we were going to be growing a lot as a couple and as people from
Oh, for
age
sure.
20 to throughout kind
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
our marriage together. And we knew that there was a lot of things that we had to work on personally
Oh, yeah.
and as a couple, and that we needed time to mature. And yeah, so we went through a lot of,
Like sometimes we say we raised each other.
yeah,
Mm.
kind of.
Like just because we're like in the early 40s, in the early 20s, you're still like trying to. You have a lot of stuff to figure out.
Yeah.
Right?
a lot of stuff to
And
figure
if you
out.
can have someone, you're like, hey, so like I'm thinking about this. What are you thinking? Oh well, like let's talk it through. Let's well, I don't know. Why do you think that? Where are
Yeah.
you coming from this? Why do you think about that?
And family consideration, like you were talking about how it was talked about in your family
Mhm.
divorce.
Mhm.
It's so important to understand the viewpoints of where you each come from in family to be able to just understand the language that you use,
Mhm.
maybe the expectations that you have on each other. And I think that's something that people don't often kind of consider, because at first maybe it just seems so exciting and you're just like, we'll figure this out
Yeah.
later, I'll work out. Sometimes it takes a little
Mhm.
bit more than just it will work out.
Yeah.
You really have to be open and honest.
And
with
these are
yourself.
things whether we think they're going to show up,
Sure.
they'll show up.
They
Oh,
will show
absolutely.
up.
It all
Absolutely.
shows up. So
Mhm.
don't try to fool yourself into
Exactly.
Yeah.
believing that these things that we don't know or can just shove them under the rug or
Yep.
whatever, they're
Yeah.
going to show up.
Oh,
So
100%.
let's get them out. Let's
Mhm.
try to figure out what they are and
Yeah.
work through that. Understand that.
Yeah.
Right or wrong isn't the issue, but just at least you can't deal with something you can't see.
Yeah.
And then all of that just gets murky and
Oh, totally.
Right.
It's that whole idea of like you can change somebody as you go, but
Yeah.
you have to be careful that they are showing you who they are.
Mhm.
And if you
Yeah.
think that those sorts of things will just slough off and your love will overcome, it just that's the person they're showing you. So gotta eyes wide open.
That's why I don't.
Yeah.
very quick of a new card.
Probably.
Yeah.
I'll give it to you. Here you go, ma'am.
Tell us about one of your favorite dates.
What's that?
Yeah, we're not really in a
We were talking about this before we came here. We're like, when we go out for supper, which we enjoy doing, it's really awkward probably for everyone else because we can talk in the car the whole way there.
Yeah.
As soon as we get to the restaurant, it's silent. Like we don't say anything to each
Anything.
other
and we're just
until we
like-
leave, and then we start talking again. I don't
and
know
we
why.
eat so fast, and we try to like. Sometimes we'll like look at the time. We're like, "Have we been here for an hour? Good for us! Like
Yeah.
we've done a good job. Like look at us be all like we're dining." So
Yeah.
yeah, we're not. It looks really awkward. I do remember our first date, and I think it was at
What
like
was
a
our
restaurant.
first date?
It's at the Log Cabin, which is
Oh.
now I think a church in
Oh, like the one
Morden.
in Morden.
yeah.
Yeah, and I had chicken. And I was sitting on a spinny chair, which is super distracting for me because I love spinny chairs.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and it was just dead silence. I don't think we said
I
anything.
don't think there was very many people there either.
We
And
ate in
were
like half an
17,
hour and
18.
but we went.
Yep.
Sounds like you have the same problem as us.
Eat fast.
He's learning to at least put his fork down
Sure.
between
totally.
bites.
Count. Sometimes I actually count
Yes.
to two.
But we're
just get this
in-
done a little faster.
Yeah.
After people
Yeah.
gone
Leave before they finish, so,
it's like,
yeah.
yeah, we're not very good at the dating thing.
But our best, my favorite date was when we actually met.
Pre-marriage?
The pre-marriage when
Oh.
we
Mm.
met, and that was over at Patterson Pit when there was a crew of people, and I was there with my.
It wasn't really a
Four-wheeler?
date. We just
No, we
that's-
just met, and
people
I
just-
took you on a ride, and it was good. It was just
Best
good.
time ever.
That was it. You were there,
crashed the
nothing mattered.
four-wheeler.
Oh no.
He
Nothing
crashed
matter.
the four-wheeler with me on it.
That's perfect.
Flipped.
And that's the
Oh,
only time you
I don't know how
ever
we didn't get hurt.
screamed at me or hit me
That's
for
true.
doing something stupid like that.
It's
Because
true.
you must have
I
wanted this relationship to happen. Clearly.
That's
That
not
would have
true
been
love.
very surprising, but just yeah. as a
Yeah.
person who's had some vehicle accidents, I can appreciate that has been concerning.
It was a little, and yet we both just stood up and laughed and that kind of laugh. Oh, that was wonderful, dear.
You did call me
Do
dear.
it again. Probably was what I was thinking.
I just wanted you to hold on tighter. That's why I
Yeah.
drove that way.
Yeah.
Maybe the crash was just a way to make it a little
Exactly.
little
Yeah.
tippier. Uh-huh.
So,
We do like going to farmers markets though.
Yeah,
That
farmers
it-
markets.
that's
Yeah, like when
about
we
it.
lived in Winnipeg, it was always a treat to wake up Saturday morning and go to the St. Norbert's Farmers Market. We'd walk around there,
Yeah. Got some
buy
spring
way
rolls.
too many pastries
Way too many, and spring rolls.
and spring rolls.
well, and
That's
for us,
fair
as we moved, got older, or kids and married longer, then our dates ended up being just get a sitter,
Totally.
go to
Mhm.
the city, have something to eat, and then we'd stop at Costco or Superstore because we didn't have them here and buy diapers and
Yeah.
underwear and
Totally.
It
And
was
we'll-
sometimes my request for our anniversary was
Just to
even
go.
where
Yeah.
can I take you? Costco.
Costco.
hot dog and french
Exactly.
fries.
There you
Yes.
go.
He's like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Mm-hmm."
Uh-huh. Like a Kia, that would be like
Yeah.
with a hot dog when you're just saying
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that sounds
Nice.
fantastic.
The
But I would
sounds.
say my favorite dates when our kids were little would have been once they were in bed,
Mm.
we'd get a sitter and we'd just go for a drive.
Yeah,
Cup
exactly.
Yeah.
of
I've done
coffee,
that
go get
too.
an ice cream or something. But for me,
Mhm.
that big fancy, I'm too tired in the evenings.
Oh,
I don't
oh,
want to
yeah.
100%.
Just give me a little window of your time and I'm
Yeah.
happy. So
Like an hour conversation
Yeah.
where there's no kids in the background going,
Yeah.
Mom, 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 Mom.
Yeah.
You're like,
When
"Ugh."
we were dating,
Yeah, we went for drives.
we would go for drives in the hills, but we'd always have to go to Morton first to buy a Slurpee
Is
and Doritos,
And Doritos, Cool
Oh.
Ranch.
Cool Ranch,
Cool Ranch
Yeah.
Doritos.
and then go
with
for
a
a drive in the
Slurpee.
hills. That's
Yeah.
a good time.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, we're not terribly has to be a certain
No.
kind of date or anything like
No.
that. It's just kind of in the moment, and you have to learn how to be very flexible when you have children. And
So true.
And it changes based on what you're doing, your occupation, or the age of your kids.
Totally.
But essentially, the end game for us has always been the same: just being able to have that time together.
Yeah.
No distractions. Talk about what's going on, life,
yeah,
whatever it is.
yeah, just
And
that connection.
dream
Yeah.
together. Think about stuff.
Absolutely.
Just
because dreams are free.
well,
You had to learn
it
that.
took me a while.
Dreams were free. Just let me dream. You'd be
Yeah.
so paranoid. I have to build you that house tomorrow. And I'm like, I'm
It's
just
okay.
dreaming. I'll never have
Yes.
that house.
Yes.
Dreams are free.
Sometimes Sam said that he always had this grand idea of how he was supposed to kind of do things for me or whatever, and then but then he'd just wind up doing nothing because he couldn't even like do anything. And I was like, dude, all I need is like a chocolate bar. Like I'm fine. Like it's okay. You don't have to like
And you're
have
like, I have to buy
helicopters.
the chocolate factory.
Yeah.
Buy the
That's what a
almond
real
farm.
man would do.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
A real husband would
Yeah.
There's
do.
like a red rose in between. Yeah, no, it's,
absolutely.
no.
If
I
I
was
can't
just
do that,
like,
then what's the point?
I'm fine. Just even a hey, you're doing a good job. Is
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's fine.
Well, Dale actually wrote me a song once called Liquid Rose because
Oh,
he just, if he's in town, bring me a coffee from
sure.
McDonald's and I'm fine.
Oh, liquid rose.
Yeah.
I like it.
So
Yes,
he's
he's
not
good.
good
thinking
at
it's gonna
gifts,
be-
but coffee.
I think it's
he
gonna be.
can do.
I think it's gonna be big one day.
I think so.
Someday.
Big hit.
If I can find the lyrics
Liquid Rose.
somewhere. I don't know.
You don't have them memorized?
No,
Oh, man.
no.
Okay, next.
Next.
What is your least favorite thing about being married?
Well, being an introvert, which is a little surprising to a lot of people because of my outward attitude, but I like quiet and silence, and I recharge best when I am by myself. So I would say that.
And just having somebody always around.
Yeah, just having to consider like not being able to come home and just
Right.
being in my own little bubble and move around the house in my own sort of way.
Yeah.
Leaving a little mess as I go along.
I would say my least favorite thing is that I have to consider others. Like it's kind of the same thing. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you just want to come home and you're just like, I just want to eat cold macaroni and cheese and watch TV and like leave me alone.
Yeah.
So just having to consider someone else is sometimes the least.
I agree.
For me, it would probably be just a selfish thing where I just have to put aside the things that I wanted to do maybe in life,
Sure.
and because there's other priorities. So I love driving motorcycle, and motocross and driving that way. And so I think about, oh man, I love a trail bike at 300 and blinkers, but we need a fridge and we need a stove and we need a washer and dryer before we need all of that. And so then for me, that's just a personal, just the things I'd want.
Me, it would be, thing I like least about marriage would be that he doesn't act or think like me. That's probably the biggest frustration. And after 32 years, we're still very different. How does this work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you
And
not like me yet?
And I don't learn some of those things either, no matter how many times you say them. It's just that it's going to be different.
I'm going to go into the next question right away because what is my favorite thing about being married
Yeah.
is actually that he doesn't think and act like me,
Totally.
which it drives me nuts. But at the same time, I love that he's not like me because he's so different. He's helped me grow and be different. And he's strong where I'm weak, and I'm strong where he's weak. And together we just make a better each other.
Totally.
So, yeah.
My favorite thing would be having a person, a whole person that can be everything, and I share everything with, and I don't have to go anywhere else. And I remember way back in the day with Power to Change, or men's groups, and all these men sharing their little things, and they all got together, and all good in context. But I'm thinking, why do you guys need this? Don't you have good relationships with your wives? Because
For sure.
if you're telling me stuff that you should be telling your wife, and I didn't get it. I liked and loved the fact that I had a person that I could share everything with. Everything. Now, guys, you can talk about different things with in different contexts,
Sure.
but they're very secondary when it comes to sharing. So for me, that person to have.
I think for me that would be quite similar because, like you were saying, it's the thing that drives you crazy, having alone time. But he's always there. He's my person. He's like my everything. So like if I'm having like a bad day, if I need to talk stuff out, if I need to share something, like we share everything. So and we've been told that just from other people, sometimes just an off comment, just being like, wow, you guys are good partners. Like I can see that you guys don't need to talk through everything before you know how to kind of respond to each other, or I can ask you to do something and I'm not offending you. We don't have to stop and talk about it. It's just like, yeah, this is. So when Sam was saying that we kind of raised each other, we also had to work through a lot of stuff that allowed us to have a really close relationship like that.
Absolutely.
So I completely agree, having somebody to share everything with.
And I would think that's my favorite thing too, is that you have somebody else around that you can dream with, and someone else that can pick you up when you're having a bad day, and you can do that to them if they're having a bad day, and together you can work towards, a common goal that you set out, and you're like, oh, look, we did that, or, we accomplished that, or, good job on that. And you can, someone that you can encourage and that encourages you. I think that's my favorite part.
And if something goes wrong, it's nice to have somebody that provide another perspective or somebody to maybe grieve with you through that. So yeah, just having that emotional safe space.
How important is your faith individually as a couple?
And as a couple.
And as a couple. How important is your faith individually and as a couple?
Oh boy. It's really hard to separate them,
Yeah,
I would
that's
say. Because I grew up in a Christian family, and I accepted Jesus really early on in my life, and my relationship evolved over my whole life and in
Still
our
evolving.
19 years of marriage too. So it's really, it's just been so integral, and it's always been a constant that to separate them would be really difficult for me, because I've relied on God so much to for
Yeah.
every decision in life and every experience in life. And yes, we have fought, God and I. It's not been just a smooth ride, but and I'm still struggling with things that I've asked him for help with. But yeah,
I think
that's hard.
I think it's
It's hard.
nice to have like, as cliche as it sounds, but like a lighthouse, you know, that you're like, hey, that's where we're going.
Mhm.
And you know, sometimes maybe you go like this, but you're going, that's the direction we're going in.
Mhm.
And I think that's why it's important. I mean, that's not, like you said, that's not a personal thing, it's not a marriage thing, but like, if it is your person, it becomes your marriage, and if it is in your marriage, and it kind of feeds into you as a person as well. So it's
Yeah. I don't know.
like, I don't think you can have if both of you are believers, I don't think you can, maybe you shouldn't have a very strong individual faith but not have a together faith. That would seem,
I don't know. This is a
Strange.
tricky.
It's kind
I
of a trick
struggled
question.
with it too because I'm like,
This
it's
is
been-
hard.
We've been married so long. I don't
Yeah.
have a separate faith. Like
Yeah.
we share everything and talk
Yeah.
about everything. And like you, I became a Christian at 5, and it's
Mhm.
been a part of my whole life. Like
Yeah.
he's a part of everything, every decision
Yeah.
that we make. That like everything comes before him, and so
Yeah.
it's crucially important to me. Like but-
Absolutely.
And I agree with all of that, but there are clearly times where we come to places when we try to discern what we believe when we're both not necessarily knowing where we stand on things. Like some of the deeper truths of theology where you're going,
Mhm.
what does
Yeah.
that mean? And so you definitely, we were probably as young married couples, you know, here with our thoughts and viewpoints,
Mhm.
you know, the various things that you can, we put our stake in the ground believing these things.
For sure.
Whatever.
because of the church you went
Yeah,
into, or
and
how
Of
you were
course.
taught, or-
So even now there's still, but way, way less because we know that you're journeying together,
Yeah.
number one.
For sure.
So the individual and as a couple part, I don't think you can tear that apart. It
No.
just has to be together.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I don't think it would make any sense otherwise.
Because you are feeding off of each other, kind of like you're learning things, like you said, together, and you're questioning things together. So I have to be able to ask, hey, like, does this make sense? And are we questioning this? Do you have questions about that too? Like,
Mhm.
he helps me grow, I help him grow, and yeah, God's the filter through everything.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to tear that one
And
apart.
two becoming one is easy to say, but it's a long process.
Yeah.
And of getting to that oneness where
Yes.
you're just slowly working at that. And I see that, especially when we talk to older couples that have been married 60 years and
Yeah.
a long time. Then I go there and I love those conversations with couples that have been married that long because
Mhm.
yeah, they got it. They got it figured.
Mhm.
They've lived a strong faith life that, you know, reflected all of that in their family and their business and their marriage and all of those things. And you go, that's cool,
Hmm.
you know, because they're clearly at our spot where they don't argue about, you know, there's theologically they've come to those places together,
For sure.
and that's pretty neat when they do that as two becoming one.
I agree.
That's a journey. That's a long.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's amazing how you just kind of can circle some of the same questions for your whole relationship too, because
And then you move on your position on those things.
absolutely, absolutely. It's
that's
not,
very true.
yeah, it's very fluid. It's not static. Who's going for it?
Do you believe it is important to know your spouse's testimony, and why? I struggle with this question because I'm like, how would I not know it? And if I already know it, is
I'm-
it important? I don't.
It
just
was
is what it
important to
is.
me when I was getting to know you
Oh,
and
yeah,
and that
that's
sort of
true.
stuff. But we also, as we were pretty young, we got baptized on the same day, and so I heard
Mhm.
your testimony, and I also saw you live out your part of your younger years.
Right.
So I mean, I'm a naturally curious person, so I'd always ask you this question: Why? Why do you think that way? Why?
That's
What
right.
has happened in your life? Please tell me everything about you. So
Mhm.
yeah, I
Well,
would say
and-
it's pretty important.
And I think it's important, but one of the things that happens, I think, again, in the context of marriage is we can say a testimony, but then we also see the testimony.
Absolutely.
So then
That's right.
what we say we are and how we actually interact as individuals, well, like we see that about each other.
Mhm.
There's nothing, you're spiritually naked in front of each other, so
Mhm.
everything's exposed, you can't hide
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
So then really knowing and understanding what your partner is thinking about and
Right.
understanding or believing. I mean, it's so important in order to for both of you to move and learn.
Absolutely, because you can't
Yeah.
grow without having knowledge of how this is affecting
Mhm.
your
But
spiritual
there has
life.
to be an openness, in order to
And to also
have it.
share maybe where you're growing, because there's relationships that don't have that openness to share, and so there is that repeated of
Mhm.
behavior or of thought or expectations that are never talked about.
Mhm.
And so if you don't have the willingness to be open about that and to work through it, I think it can be a pretty lonely place sometimes too.
Oh, absolutely.
But you really and it can be quite humbling and embarrassing as well
Yeah.
to go to your spouse and say, look, I'm really struggling with this.
Mhm.
How, can you help me with this?
Mhm.
Because you think like, oh, this person knows me and we've shared so much, and how can they not know? And you can still be holding something back, and you really have to. Very humbling.
Yeah.
Very humbling. We would agree.
Really
But
so-
I think it's just hard to answer because we're married and we have marriages where we know so much about each other. But I would say pre-marriage, you
Mhm.
better know that about each other. It's a crucial
Yeah, that's true.
point to know. And like if you don't know where they've come from and what their
Mhm.
faith journey is, I don't know how you can
Mhm.
be in a relationship without not knowing that. Like it's just
Absolutely.
it's so vital to continuing to grow together. So
Yeah.
what does Ephesians 5:21 mean to you, and how do you feel it should affect your marriage?
All right. So reading Ephesians 5:21, it says, "Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ." Yikes. We've had lots of conversations about this.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as the word, I think it's the word submit. In this particular verse, it's an equal submitting. So that part's fine.
I don't have
You
much
can
of an
handle
issue
that
with
I
little
can
bit.
handle that. I'm fine.
I think if to expand a little bit
Sorry.
more on it is I think there you're submitting to this idea that you're one together, right?
Yeah.
So whatever is better for the whole of us instead of the individualistic. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay. So it's better for us to do this than for me to do this.
Mhm.
So I'll submit to that together. And I think really in your marriage vows, you're essentially saying like I'm going to put you first, right? And you
Mhm.
do the same. And if you put each other first, then you can submit forward. And I think as long as you're both on the same page, it's not that bad.
No.
But if it's you have
Well,
one person that is not on that same page,
That's because you're
difficult.
both actually getting what you want out of this deal.
Mhm.
But as soon as
Right.
one person pulls back on
Absolutely.
that, then somebody's kind of getting the short end of the stick on this whole thing. I think for me,
Mhm.
growing up and trying to understand those verses in regards to husband-wife authority and submitting and all of that,
Mhm.
I guess the first thing I always thought of is that if I submit, that means I have to just agree with and do everything. Well, that's no.
No.
That's not submitting at all.
No.
That's a completely different context.
Right.
And
Mhm.
submitting is a much deeper question, or I think an action in regards to how you relate to each other, your respect to each other,
Mhm.
even if you don't agree with each other. But it's not,
That's right.
oh, honey, I want this. Well, sure, I'll go get it. No, that's not. That has nothing to do with submitting.
Totally.
But I think we often just go that shallow route, and that's not nearly deep enough
Nope.
in order to get to that point.
Mhm.
Yes, I
Yeah.
agree with all of you. I have nothing more to say.
I think the difficulty for a lot of people in this verse is that word submit, because right away you think of like a boss-employee relationship or a military relationship or something like that, and it's not what it is. So theologian Sam wishes that we could change that word to something else.
to maybe
To-
better reflect or maybe allow for people not to go right to the power indifference, the power struggle
Right.
that can come from that particular word. Because in the Western culture filter, when you see that word, mostly it's the husband or
It's a power subversive
Yeah.
Mhm.
thing
Yeah.
when really that's not the intention at all.
no, not at
what's
all.
No,
being
I've
said.
Not
always,
at all.
when I've read it, and it might be because, again, how you grow up or whatever, and just the relationship we've had, but I've always seen it as a giving of yourself
Mhm.
to one another.
Mhm.
It just, and maybe I just switched it because I don't like the word submit. I don't know, but it just, that's what you do. You essentially, you're giving to each other.
Yeah.
Like,
Or
Yeah.
making yourself available to that person
Mhm.
would even be a different bent on that,
Yeah.
which makes more sense in the relationship and
Mhm.
the being that for somebody and submitting to you to be something for you.
Right.
What do you need me
Exactly.
to be? Because
Right.
that might be a voice, that might be strength, that might
Mhm.
be an encouragement. It can
Mhm.
be a whole ton of different things
Totally.
depending on what the context is.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
if that's what we are, then we know we have that for each other,
Mhm.
right? So then
Sure.
hey, I've got somebody that's with me on this because they're on my side with this.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been messed up.
Yeah.
Context wise.
Mhm.
It's a whole way of being and a whole way of how you think about your relationship, and not just what you're going to take from it, but what can you give to it. And it's this whole, it becomes like a whole lifestyle thing. It
Mhm.
isn't just like a one-time thing or only in this certain area, because oftentimes in the wording that we use in North American culture for this is it's very specific to one certain thing, right? Like, okay, I'll submit to my boss at work, but once I leave work, like,
Mhm.
now I'm on my time. So where this is like, it's a lifestyle. It's always like, it's not just in this certain specific instance.
And I
Mhm.
think we also get very hung up on the first part of the verse.
Mhm.
What does the whole verse say?
Mhm. To each other out of reverence.
Out of reverence.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
when you think of it that way, right away you've brought him
Mhm.
into this
Mhm.
between you. So if he is the center of it, how is submitting become such a negative thing?
Mhm.
That's exactly it. And it isn't.
No.
But that word at the beginning of the sentence is just so hard
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
it's hard to,
That's where we get stuck. I think.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have to really like expand on it quite a bit, especially the verses that follow it then too. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's a lot more than just those words and what those words say.
Yeah.
But if you allow your marriage to be open to a partnership where you are putting the person ahead of yourself, then it is like a really encouraging, really lovely sacrifice. If you're coming into your marriage where this hasn't been reflected to
That's
you, if you have never experienced this, if you've been
Mhm.
told very different things about men and women relationships or in marriage, then sometimes your expectations of that application
That's right.
can be quite dangerous. And
And if you
yeah.
don't have a relationship that is mutually giving to each other,
Yeah.
and you haven't seen that, or maybe your parents didn't model that for you, or your friends' marriages don't model that for you, you go, well, that just isn't even possible. Like,
Yeah.
forget that.
But that speaks to how you get through those times of difficulty as you move
Yes.
forward.
Yeah.
So those times just don't disappear; they just change. The difficulty is
Absolutely.
always
Absolutely.
there. How it shows up, how it
Mhm.
expresses itself and manifests itself are always different.
Mhm.
So you know that. But
Mhm.
if you can't get this kind of figured out in a simple form,
Yeah.
in early on in your marriage, then man, these
Yeah.
things that come swipe at your relationships, they'll take you
Yeah.
down in a hurry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you see that all the time where people just aren't prepared for that.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen it in our own marriage.
Yeah,
When we
and-
weren't living that, how
Yeah.
the friction, and you're fighting but pulling further apart because
Mhm.
you're not submitting to each other.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. That
And I think what you said at the beginning of our conversation, like whatever,
2 hours ago.
2 hours ago, was that this idea that when you just swipe it under the rug, right? Sweep it under the rug. And at the beginning of your marriage, if you get married younger, the problems aren't so big, let's say, right? Like you still have some problems, but that's really the time when you really have an opportunity to hone your communication skills, to work through some smaller problems. They don't seem small at the time, but
Right.
right. So that's the time when you can really
Mhm.
deal with those things and learn those skills that help you go through.
Because life will throw you a bunch of curves that
Mhm.
you never saw coming, or you'll have conversations you never thought you'd have to have. So,
Mhm.
this is a helpful guide
Yeah.
to put a framework into marriage.
What does it mean to respect your husband?
Yeah, I'd like to know that too. And I'd like it recorded.
Is there?
So we're supposed to be very personal here.
Yes.
So, okay, I'll start then.
Okay.
I know for me to respect my husband means he needs to know that I value him. He feels respected.
And that's all I need.
Did I do it?
You did
right?
it, yeah.
Oh,
And that's all I need. I mean,
why do you
there's-
need it recorded?
I don't
You
know.
know that.
I know, but I wanted everybody else to hear it.
For us, that has been a huge thing that I've had to learn. What does it mean for Dale to feel respected?
Yeah.
And I can just plow all sorts of issues aside, and none of it matters if I know that she values me and respects me. That's, I mean, the details don't matter. Hey, we're good because she does need me. She respects me, and I'm totally content
show
with
that
that.
by valuing you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a big question.
It
We
is.
were having conversation about this also before this evening too, and what does that mean? And I think for me, we're both firstborns, and we're both similar firstborns in the sense that we're both very independent, we're very opinionated. We come with our own sets of like, I can do it myself, and you know what, like, thanks for being there, but I can do it myself. So I think for me, making sure that I tell Sam that he matters in my decision making, he matters to me in my day to day, that I'm thinking about him, and that I actually need him to help me, because I think sometimes I forget to tell you how much I appreciate everything that you do for me on a day-to-day basis, because there's so many things that I couldn't do without you. So I think just making sure that my independence isn't roaring maybe a little too loud. So yeah, just telling you that you matter, and you matter a great deal. So yeah, how much I appreciate you. I think just telling you that. I know, I was like, ugh!
Getting,
It's like,
it's getting a little emotional. After a while.
It's getting a little much.
still
Next
not younger.
question,
All right,
please. Next question.
it's getting hot.
Okay,
Did you
let's go
record
home.
that?
Can you read it?
What does it mean to love your wife? That's to me and you. I guess, yeah.
I guess so.
Oh, I could tell you. Do you want me to tell you?
You know that answer.
I'll just like pass you a note. Here, read this.
Here's the cue cards.
What did you say
told you.
earlier?
Yeah.
What was you saying about this?
I think it's in here somewhere. I stuck it in my Bible.
You know, there's a couple. You know, as we've talked about a few other things, you learn about things
was it?
about the other person as you go along. So what works for one person might not work for another person. I don't know. I'm not married to any other people.
Well, that's very good information. Woo! That was close.
It's and like Erin said, she's a very independent person. So I think one of the ways that you really like being loved and is this idea that, you know, you have your own hopes and dreams, and you have your own goals, and you want someone to help you with that. and somebody that can say, you know what, you're doing a good job. You
Mm.
can, you got this. You
Mhm.
want to do that? Let's do that. Let's do it together. You know, we're in this together.
Mhm.
I'm here for you. If you can take that risk, because you know if you fail, I'll be there to
Mm.
pick you up.
Mhm.
And there's a few other little things like leaving you notes that you really like, and just letting you know that I'm thinking about you,
Mhm.
letting you know that I'm there for you, letting you know that you're not doing life alone, because even though you're really independent, you still like having someone there to help
Step
you
out
out.
my way.
So
Yes.
I would say that's
I completely agree.
You
Just
got
share.
a lot of things on your list there.
Just like
I don't have that many. Maybe the list gets shorter when you get older. I'm not sure.
it gets more honed.
It
Yeah.
does.
Okay, that's the word I'm
Yeah,
going to use.
honed.
I've solidified all
Yes.
of those things you just
Yes.
said into one statement that
Perfect.
I think will resonate.
It's a big one, though.
Yeah, and I haven't accomplished it completely yet. I'm
Mhm.
working at it. It's a goal. We all need goals in lives.
Mhm.
And so it would be to not just listen to what she has to say
Mm.
when we talk, but to hear it. So I've listened to tons of stuff and I've heard
Yes.
none of it. So I've been guilty of that so often. So I need to, if she knows that I'm hearing what she's saying,
Right.
I feel loved.
we're good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Right.
again, she's trying to express herself,
Mhm.
and if we're supposed to be doing this together,
Yeah.
and she is trying to express what she's thinking, and again, it's just dreams, thoughts, stuff that you unload on each
Mhm.
other
Mhm.
about life and whatever. If I'm hearing that, then she has a safe place to do that,
Mhm.
and she knows that. Well, it takes taken me a long time to realize that I don't have to give any answers. I don't need an answer to the
Exactly.
question,
Right.
because I
Yeah.
used to think that, oh shoot, there's another. What kind of answer am I supposed to give to this? And so I make something up, right? You just kind of whatever, as good as you know, but
Sure.
that's not what's required.
Mhm.
Hear me, hear, see,
Yes.
hear. So she has
Put the
to,
phone down.
Yeah,
like,
she's
Yes.
like-
You're not listening to me.
like a little boy.
Yes.
Did you
You
hear
hear?
what I had to say?
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. So that's pretty simple.
yeah, I can relate to that. Sometimes if I'm like, I'm talking to you, but you're walking away down the hallway, I'm like,
Talking to nothing.
excuse me.
Yeah.
So that would be it for us.
Yeah.
Again, that's a honed.
Yeah, it's
Right.
good. Very
Is it our
nice.
turn
Yes.
again?
I don't know what it is.
I think so.
There's only one card
There's
left.
one card left. Where do you think married people fit in the message of the gospel? Between
Did I know that
Matthew
question
and
was
Mark.
coming?
It's
I
a
think-
marriage. It's another
Like-
M.
All right, how many
I think
memory
he's
cards? you got?
asking. I think Rob wants us to answer these questions because he needs some more.
You need some more
Message
material. for
material.
Oh,
something.
perfect.
Do you have some questions you'd like answered? yeah. Ay.
I think.
Take it away.
Well,
Yeah, Dale, we actually discussed this. He's got a winner.
Oh, good.
I'm gonna
Oh,
let him
perfect.
answer.
Good,
We're
good,
good.
perfect.
He's got a winner.
I'm supposed.
Winner,
Lead
winner.
with
for
the
you.
winner.
okay, I'll go first,
go
and then you
first.
can,
Can win.
clean it up and be
Okay.
like,
I'll take it. I'll bring it home.
Yeah. We'll
I like
just
that.
circle it, and then you
Submit
just.
here and listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I like this. This is good.
I
All
forgot
the
the
words.
question.
Oh. Sam.
Where do you think married people fit in the message of the gospel?
I think that married people fit in the gospel because marriage in itself is a representation of Christ's relationship to the church. And I think obviously marriage requires people. So the people that are in the marriage, by putting each other first, it also represents how we're supposed to treat each other in the body of Christ, and how we're supposed to treat each other, people in the world, and how, putting each other first, being self-sacrificial,
Being good humans.
being good humans.
Being good humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Loving
Yeah,
thy neighbor.
Because I think if you would have a perfect marriage, which of course doesn't exist, but if you'd have a perfect marriage, it would be very representative of what human relationships and a church body should look like.
Mhm.
where you're putting others first. You're uplifting each other. You're allowing people to take opportunities, and you're there to pick them up. You're encouraging them. So, yeah, that's what I think.
Well, good thing this isn't a test, because I'm going to divert from that, because I agree with all of that.
Yeah.
The first thing I thought of when it came to the gospel message in a marriage is I'd have to think back to when we first got married. I spent a bunch of time trying to change her, right? Because I'd been,
And me trying to change.
yeah. So we're changing each other. Oh man, I wish she'd change. I wish she wouldn't do that. You know, little things, stupid things, just dumb things. You don't like the way, whatever it is. And so I spent that time, or spent too much time trying to do that. So when I think of the gospel is a message of freedom. It's the story of Christ, and it's the freedom that we receive because of our faith in him. And that to me is a freedom to be able to choose and to change. Now, when I apply that to me, the many years ago, this was what shifted my thinking in regards to how I wanted to make you change, to be different. I realized that I can only change myself. I'm responsible to myself as an individual under God. But when I get that right, and I do that right, then I become a very positive influence in our relationship. So all of the things I wanted and the desires that I have, you know, like even the fulfillment sexually, physically, otherwise that you're kind of longing for or would like more of, or you can't demand them, and you can't tell a person, and you can't just make a person be that for you or give you those things. But when I figured it out that I actually had a freedom, the gospel is a story of freedom, and the ability that I could change, and then I could influence our relationship. I was getting back far more than I was giving, because I was doing it in the context that I think we were called to do it in. And to me, that makes so much sense. And it was a freeing thing that changed a whole bunch, because I spent so much time working on thinking about changing her. And I had to shelve that. I have to change myself. I've got to work on my problems, my behaviors, my thinking, my attitudes, whatever it is. Once I get that figured out to a better level, then I come into this game as a far more, a far better father and a far better husband. And then all of these things that were potentially a roadblock, the roadblocks were gone, because I was being that. And so all of this ends up being very reciprocal when you start doing this back to each other, back to the submitting again. So it's just deep, and it's intertwined into everything that we are and how we live and breathe. But to me, the gospel is the freedom to change. And I don't have to be this way. I can change, but I'm responsible only to myself. But when I change myself, I influence all the people around me. And the first influence should be your wife, and then your children, and then moving out from there. So
Yeah, and that freedom piece it's revolutionary, and
It is.
it's simple, and it's right there, and it's, if you can apply that in your relationship and realize that it's a real relationship, like there will be ups and there will be downs, but it's the freedom to go down that journey, and to know that God's with you, and so you need to, yeah, it's just, I appreciate that the relationship that I have with God is one that I can be, look, I'm really upset right now, and sort of thing. So you can really have that real open honesty, because there is that freedom, because there is that, yeah. And then taking that into your marriage, and to those people around you too, even as a married couple, just influencing those that come into contact with you, and maybe the projects and the dreams that you get to work on together. I agree. I like the perspective of the freedom perspective, because that's what it is.
well, I mean, when we accept Christ, these are things we're told and we learn and we try to understand. In Romans 6, we're not under sin. We're not slaves to sin. And so you can talk all you want about these things, but in a marriage relationship, it's actually a beautiful place where this works out. to the benefit of both of you.
Mhm.
And then essentially when this is good, then all of the stuff that the collateral, as much as there's always collateral damage when a bomb explodes,
Sure.
I think there's collateral influence when God actually, you allow God to work in your life, and those are the opposite.
When you have
That's
healthy.
right. Yeah, that's
When
the
you-
opposite of the shrapnel. It's
Mhm.
it's the blessing, it's the love, it's the relationships, it's the joy, it's the stuff that, wow, look at all the stuff that's coming out of this. This
Right.
Mhm.
bomb of goodness blew up,
And we
and
have such opportunity when we have healthy marriages to
Mhm.
be
That's very true.
a witness, an example of
Mhm.
what Christ, how he wants us to live that out. And
Yeah.
we have such a testimony that we can share when
Absolutely.
and healthy doesn't mean perfect.
No.
Healthy
Oh my
doesn't
goodness,
mean-
no.
Healthy,
No.
healthy doesn't mean we cover it up. Healthy means it's real, and we
Yes.
try to
Yep.
deal with it
That's right.
wisely, safely, and
Yeah.
in the
And-
context it should be.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's important. I think it's so important for young people, and we do get this comment a lot because of where we work and the relationships with the young people. Is they see that and they love that.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
probably one of the things they see is just transparency
Mhm.
and something that's real,
Mhm.
and because it's actually the only thing that makes sense,
Mhm.
because we all see the other stuff.
Mhm.
But when do
Yeah.
we get the real? When do we get the real deal, and how do we actually deal with it?
Yeah.
So when couples are doing that in a healthy way,
Yeah.
again, not in a perfect way,
No.
but in a healthy way, that is so good to see. And
Oh,
it's so
absolutely.
good for young people to see.
Yeah, it's good to have those positive things of people who are being honest and being real, because you, like you said, you hear so much of the, I don't know, it's the Instagram kind of stories that, I don't know, everything looks perfect, but it isn't. There's so much stuff that's going on underneath there, and that's the real stuff. That's life. So, yeah,
And you need somebody that's has your back so that
Yeah.
you can.
yeah, but
Make
that's
it through.
it's the freedom that you're
Yeah.
talking about. It's the freedom we have even
This
in a
was
healthy
fun.
relationship.
this was fun chatting.
Can we kiss now?
No.
We're-
I don't know how PG this episode was supposed to be. So.
Is it G++?